Awesome. Well, thanks for having me this morning. Yeah, I guess I'll just talk a little bit about the first couple weekends. Obviously, it's nice to jump out 7-2. It's always nice to win some games. I think, from my perspective, what we're trying to do is build a good softball team, and so 7-2 is nice, but we're just evaluating, what we think we did well, what we think we did poorly. I think the initial thought is that the offense is farther along than what I was anticipating. We have a lot of really good, young, talented hitters. That's obvious. But just to see them do what they've done so far, in conjunction with some of the returning upperclassmen, has been really good, and we've scored a lot of runs. So just showed a lot of potency in the offense. I think that's been really good. Defensively, pitching wise, we're settling in. We were much better in week two than we were week one, which that was the focus, was just I mean, it's one thing to hit the ball, it's one thing to be able to pitch, but you have to play good softball to win. And especially if you want to beat good teams. And quite honestly, first weekend out, we didn't play a lot of good softball. We won some games, but there was, some things that, you can't pitch behind in the count, and you can't make errors and win the game and those sorts of things. So we cleaned things up. The first game of weekend two was a little shaky defensively. I think the dirt got the better of us, but after that first game, we really settled in defensively and not just made the routine plays, but went out there and stole a couple of hits that ended up winning ball games. And I think the catch from Mattiello in left field in the Western Kentucky game really kind of sealed the thing for us. And so it's nice to see those types of progressions. The pitchers got better from weekend one to weekend two. They just hit better spots. Opponent batting averages dropped off. Part of that was competition, but they really just threw better. And so we are, again, pleased to be 7-2. We're pleased with what we're seeing from our offense, but I think also pleased with the progression and the improvement of the team from weekend one to weekend two. And we're excited to kind of get a little deeper into our schedule and start to play some teams that will answer the question of, are we good at beating bad teams or are we good at softball? And that's obviously what we'll be working towards in the weeks to come.
Whoever wants to go first can go first. All right, I'll go first. So I wanted to ask about some of the comeback wins that you guys had. How important is it for this team, especially you mentioned with how young they are, to be able to see that they can have some of these comebacks, some of these walk-offs in the first couple weekends of the season, rather than maybe it being, 3, 4 weeks in before you're able to get a comeback win like that?
Yeah, well, the offense is certainly it's big for them to be able to do that and to gain that confidence. The offense is certainly talented enough that we can play from behind. I don't think that's going to be a problem. And we've done it more than we haven't. Every time we've all but one, the Marshall game, we didn't come back from behind, and it wasn't because we weren't good enough. It wasn't because we didn't hit well enough, not because we didn't have opportunities, but we simply the moment got too big and we swung at the wrong pitches. And so, we had that little hiccup, and we talked about those things. And then, we had an opportunity in the first game of the weekend at Army to show it again. And so it's really good for them to have that success. I think probably in the long run, it was probably good to have that failure in the Marshall game too, and to know what it feels like to allow the moment to become too big. But we're certainly obviously pleased to come out with the wins, and then obviously pleased that some of our younger hitters in particular get that experience of playing from behind.
I was curious, talking about the comebacks, what's causing you guys to fall behind? Because it seems like it's like one big inning kind of gets away from you guys, and then it's the rest of the game is spent trying to make up for that. What's causing you guys to fall behind in those comebacks?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it like most recently the Western Kentucky game, it was I think it was four consecutive hits, and the last one was a grand slam, and you can't do that. And obviously it's early at first weekend, it was more errors and working behind in the count. And I mean, you give up a 2-0 hit, like that's no surprise. You're behind in the count. That's what happens in 2-0 counts, and making mistakes on defense, allowing pop flies to drop. It was a little bit less of that in weekend two than it was weekend one, so that's good. That's step one is solidify the pitching and the defense. But, and we still have further adjustments to make. That was a really small park, and that hitter got a hold of one with the bases loaded, and all of a sudden we're playing from behind 4-0. But I think the promising thing for me is that we significantly improved on the mound from week 1 to week 2. We significantly improved in the field from week 1 to week 2, and we're going to be, if we continue down that path, we will be playing from behind less than what we have.
You mentioned players getting a hold of balls. Mackenzie Lakin's been really good to start. What was the process? She committed to the previous coaching staff. What was the process of getting in, making sure she still wanted to be a Hawkeye, and then getting the most out of her these first 2 weeks?
Yeah. Well, she, like so many in that 2025 class, they really committed to the University of Iowa. And that the University of Iowa didn't change with the coach. They love this place. This is where they want to be. And so, that 2025 class, it stuck because that's what they committed to. And they were obviously excited to be a part of the program going forward. So that part, quite honestly, is pretty smooth sailing. And then, from there, it's just a game of maturity. The talent's all there. It's not just Lycan. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of talent in that freshman class. And so it's just, who can put it together the quickest? Who can show the maturity in those big moments in the game? Who can step up and play and swing, without a fear of failure? Or throw a pitch with no fear of failure. Just be able to throw pitches with high intent, make swings with high intent. And I think a lot of our young athletes have shown that they can do that. And it's been really fun to watch them progress. And I'm gonna tell you right now, it's not just the names that we're going to talk about today. There's more coming out of this freshman class that are going to have big time careers. There's a lot of talent.
I wanted to follow up a little bit. You started expanding a little bit on the pitching rotation. I just wanted to kind of see if you could expand a little bit more on just what you thought, how you thought they all kind of handled some of the ups and downs of those first 2 weekends.
Yeah, I think by and large they handled them well. We had a couple of growing moments with our freshmen, which no surprise there, where I gave up a couple of hits and they're scoring runs and I'm freaking out a little bit. And okay, but let's settle down. We need to compete, execute your next pitch. Let's one step in front of the other. And those were valuable experiences for those freshmen. But I think when you look at it as a whole, it's not like everything has gone well on the mound and everything's gone well defensively the whole time. It hasn't. The record is not reflective of some of the struggles, in game that have come. But I think by and large, we've either accepted the challenge and grown from it or handled it very well in the first place. And I think Avery Sapp is one that, I think she had some really rough moments week 1, and then week 2 she just locked and loaded, settled in, threw great. Was probably our toughest pitcher on the weekend. Braylon Conlon, a couple of walks, but really throwing well. Soraya Nice, it's a small ballpark and a couple of big hits off of her, and she doesn't like giving those up. But that's part of playing in a small ballpark, and it gives her feedback, and she's really stepped up to the challenge as well. So I like what I've seen from our bullpen in terms of maturity.
Last year when the women's basketball team was having some success early on from some younger players, Coach Jensen called it the climb of the innocents, basically, or the innocent, and they didn't really know like all the things that they needed to be afraid of quite yet. How much of that is the early success from your freshman class, and how do you make sure that once they realize all the things that could go wrong or all the things that they need to be managing, that they don't necessarily lose that productivity?
Well, I think two pieces. I think there's some truth to that of, what Coach Jensen said is the nail, you hit the nail on the head, you come out, you play great right away, and then it's like, oh, this is easy, and the 4-year trajectory, we all know it's going to have some ups and downs. That's part of it. But I also really want to point out some of our upperclassmen, and there's tremendous talent in our upperclassmen as well. And so, when you look at this thing, and it's like when our freshmen step to the top and they lead the charge, and they're hitting the home runs and they're doing, making the offense go. That's great. And guess what? When they maybe have an off weekend or something, I'm going to tell you right now, there's going to be a junior or a senior that steps up and gets the job done in their place. I think that there is tremendous depth in this offense, and I don't think that we're solely reliant on young talent or old talent. I think that both are going to have their time and their place on this team, and we've already seen flashes of that.
How much of a surprise was it to kind of start to see in real time during the games this past weekend, the realization of like, oh, we are like the at bats are working, like what we've been doing, like us trying to get some more out of the offense is showing up in games. Like what was that initial reaction like for you?
Yeah, it's like I told you guys, I think it was a little farther ahead than what I thought. I thought the offense was good. I didn't know if, they were going to be able to perform at this level quite yet. So I would say the offense has exceeded my expectations a little bit, but not really in the long run, just really in the right here and the right now. I knew they were going to be good. I just didn't know how fast they were going to be good.
How does that maybe change what your approach is now to continuing to get the offense to grow, knowing that they may be a little bit further than you initially expected at this point?
Well, I think it puts us in a position to be able to challenge them more. They're not obviously, when they have success, they're not as delicate mentally. And so we can just really kind of get after them at practice and, makes drills hard and make practice hard and allow them to fail in a way that causes them to grow. And so I think, with a team that's doing some things like that's the fun part is that training that team is fun.
Or do you
You
go ahead, Justin?
talked about the value of that Marshall loss, just to kind of experience what that was like. Kind of in the same vein, to go 4-0 on a weekend, to be undefeated, to end the weekend without a setback. How important is something like that for your team and what you want them to experience as you're kind of building and getting ready for conference?
Yeah, I mean, it's great, you you need both. And the four and 0 was hard fought. And I think like from a schedule perspective, I think people are saying, well, that wasn't the toughest competition. Well, first of all, let me tell you, Western Kentucky is good. And they've been good for a long time. And Justin, you know that. So that was going to be a hard fought game no matter what happened. Mercer wins a lot of games. These are teams that they know how to win. And so I think every Division I win is good. I think everybody's good. I think everybody's got pitching, everybody's got players. So I just want to say that out front, but nonetheless, I still think it's hard to go 4-0 any weekend. It's hard to be undefeated, and so I think this was a really really good experience again for our team because it's not like we just rolled in there and every game was easy. Three of the four were very hard fought. There were three of those wins that were very very hard fought wins, and that's huge. Walk away 4-0 where you really had to work for three of them. I mean that's really it's awesome.
Last week at a basketball game, you said that this is going to be a team that makes a lot of people fall in love with Hawkeye softball again. What makes you confident in saying that?
I think this team can do some things that a lot of teams in this program in recent history have not been able to do. Um, Obviously, hit home runs is at the top of the list right now, and that's going to be really fun for fans is to see that potency to show up to the game and to watch a come from behind win. They're just fun to watch, right? From a fan's perspective. Um, and I think, I mean, the pitching staff is gonna compete as a team. They're gonna compete as a unit. That's something that hasn't happened in this program for a long time. It's been very dominated by one pitcher, and that's been for the long-term trajectory. You go back 20 years, and that's just the way the game was played. In recent history, obviously a little bit more pitched by committee, but that's not something that this program has experienced at a very high level. And so we're excited to bring those things to this fan base and to win at a high level in front of this fan base in a way that's fun and exciting. And so, I mean, I made that comment at a women's basketball, at halftime of the women's basketball game last week. I'm going to make that same comment tonight at the men's basketball game because I believe it's true. I think people love softball. I think they love softball all over the country, but they need to re-fall in love with Iowa softball. And I think that's what this team is going to do.
You mentioned the pitch by committee. Does that make it harder to get top level pitching recruits because they probably grow up being the number one player on their middle school team, their high school team, their travel ball team? It doesn't make it more difficult to recruit, or is it just kind of explaining to a player why it's maybe more beneficial for the long-term longevity of their career to be in a pitch by committee situation?
Well, I'm very direct with them, and on the front end, if you want to come out and throw 7 consecutive innings, don't come here, go somewhere else. Um, Now don't get me wrong, like if Nyjah Kennedy was on my team, she'd probably throw 7 innings. So we're not dumb. We're not mismanaging. What we're doing is we're leveraging what we have to the fullest of its ability. The bottom line is the longer you leave a pitcher out there, you leave him the third trip through the lineup, and I left Soraya Neese the third trip through the lineup in Florida, and we paid for it. You know, the longer you leave him in the lineup, the worse things happen. And you get a pitcher of, say, like a Nyjah Kennedy's quality, her third trip through the lineup is still better than somebody else's first trip. And we recognize that. And if we get a pitcher like that in our program, we will manage that pitcher in that way. Having said that, from a recruiting standpoint, no, it hasn't been an issue. I just tell them up front, this is what it is. If you don't want to come here, don't come here. But you're going to experience a lot of success in the system. We have a long-term track record of turning out a lot of really good pitchers. And you'll be successful in the system. That's the pitch, and they like that idea. Like, oh, I'm going to go there and I'm going to pitch well and win. That sounds good. Let's do that.
I've got a little bit of a random one for you, but it's something that I wasn't expecting to pop up, but it popped up with Penn State last week, a couple of others. So I just want your thoughts. Playing teams in your conference, but in non-conference games. It's a Big Ten thing this year, apparently. Clarissa had some pretty specific thoughts about it. Do you have thoughts on that?
I like it. Let's do it. We don't play all 17. And I know it's not going to impact the final standings in the conference, but listen, non-conference is it's a reaction to our conference schedule, right? Whatever your conference schedule is and what you have on your team, you schedule an appropriate non-conference. Okay, here's what I'm looking at. In the Big Ten, there's a lot of really, really good opponents for us from a non-conference perspective. We don't play Wisconsin. I mean, if we could get them in a midweek, I don't know if it's going to happen. If we could get Wisconsin on a midweek, we'd love to. They're 3 hours from us, and I think that'd be a really nice opponent for both schools. So, I like it. I do have strong opinions on it. But it's all within the context of, like what's the non-conference schedule that your team and your program needs. And I think that for a lot of us, there's just really good opponents to be had that are regional. We all know we all recruit against them anyway. So, hey, let's go play a ball game, try to win a recruit or two,